Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Little did I know when I was starting to prepare this talk a few weeks ago that I would be referring to a play written 400 years ago, talking about characters from 2,000 years ago. Anyone know the play? Julius, anyone know why Julius Caesar? Anyone know why I'm talking about Julius Caesar today? Because of the performance at the, I guess it's the New York Shakespeare in the Park. Some amazing events, some of them are a little bit disturbing, happened over the last few days. One of the things that is mind-boggling is Bank of America and Delta, two companies that I've dealt with in my life, have withdrawn funding over a play written 400 years ago about characters 2,000 years ago. There have also been disruption of the play. And again, this is not a political speech, this is a literary and legal speech. But what I'm trying to say, if I have any message, is that your words matter. Your characters matter. Sometimes to the tune of $100,000, $200,000. And my prediction is somebody in this room is going to write a play or a screenplay or video, whatever they're doing 400 years from now, and somebody is going to disrupt your play. And I think that's something that all of you want. There's been a lot of talk that says the novel is dead and that writing the long form is dead. Well, I'm not here to bury the novel, but to praise that and to praise all of you. You guys, who here writes novels? Who here writes short stories? Who here writes memoirs? Who here writes science fiction, science fiction, I should probably ask about that. Any science fiction writers? Zach in the back. Who writes historical fiction? We have got a lot of amazing talent in this room, and hopefully you'll be able to take some of what I say today and use it in what you write. When shall we meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain? For those of you interested in the more legal aspects, I will be doing a talk at the State Bar of New Mexico this Saturday at 1:30. That's right there on Masthead. So I'm going to just touch on the legal issues, but I am going to talk them a little. If you have any real detailed questions about that, come and see me at that meeting, and it's free of charge at the State Bar of New Mexico this Saturday at 1:30. First I want to talk about, again, to write or not to write. I want to focus on what you shouldn't write. Do not write about something you don't care about. Any historical fiction writers? Somebody who's writing historical fiction. What are you writing about? What year? What era? 1800s. You don't want to write about Rome, do you? So you want to write, the 1800s for some reason speaks to you, and the stories speak to you. So again, do not write what you don't care about. So to take that one step further, do not write about people you don't care about. Do not write about characters that don't speak to you, especially if you're doing it for free. I once wrote, somebody came up to me and had a really fascinating story about an event that happened in New Mexico history in the last century, in the last 40, 50 years ago. Her story was fascinating. It really was like, wow, this is a good story. But unfortunately, other than once she got past the pitch, I didn't have any idea what she was talking about. She wasn't very articulate. There were some translation problems. And even though I tried and tried to write it, and she said, I'll pay you as soon as the manuscript is finished, I never finished it. She did get her book published, but as far as I know, it sold probably less than 100 copies. Because even though it was of a historical event in New Mexico, she could not convey her message. I don't know, I think she went through 4 or 5 writers before her book was finally published. So, anyone here ever have somebody come up to you and say, oh, you're a writer, you should write my book? Unless they pay you, don't do it, okay? Which brings us to what you should write. And again, continuing with my Shakespearean theme, this is a line by Polonius. Who should you be true to? To thy own self be true. John Nichols, who probably after Tony Hillerman I'd consider the Shakespeare of New Mexico, wrote a superb book called The Milagro Beanfield War. And I read in an interview somewhere where he said, my brother came up to me and said that every character in the book, and this is a book with 50 characters, I see you in. In order to create characters, put a little of yourself in the characters. Put the hopes, the fears, the dreams into these characters. You've had some disappointments in your life, have this character have some disappointments in your life. You took certain steps and took risks to overcome these challenges. Think about that as you are creating these characters, even though this character is not recognizable as you. One of my books I wrote as an Asian woman who was mentally ill, who imagined herself to be an animated character. That book was called Lawyer Geisha Pink, and it actually won a national award for multicultural fiction. Again, it was not based on personal experience, it was based on an old girlfriend who really, I don't know whether she thought she was an animated character. But again, her dream was to be a better person, to be a better family person, to be true to her family. And I took that theme, and when I was able to write it, I was able to translate it and have a fairly successful result. I went to the American Film Institute. For 2 years, I have a master's in film. Some of you who have read my earlier books know that on one of the first pages, Jonathan's goal is to pay off his student loans before he dies. I'm over 50, and I was finally able to do that last year. Which brings us to my first weekend at the American Film Institute. There was something that I literally cannot forget, and this was 15 years ago. Actually, almost 20 years ago. Is that in order to have this bonding experience, we got into a room and each of us told our hopes and fears and dreams and the themes in our lives. And I guess my theme was I was scared of disappointing my parents. I was torn between making people happy and following true art and that sort of thing. And again, those are themes that I hit in my writing basically in every novel. In my class, and you can look this up at American Film Institute, in another section there was a young woman named Patty. And Patty's dream was that she grew up around a lot of tough women, and that when she went out into the world surrounded by men, she had to be tougher. And at first, she didn't really like it because she didn't think they were telling the truth, and she didn't understand all the challenges. But she took the extra time to learn about what was out there and looked to herself and found that she had lots of strengths. And apparently that's what she said to another group. Her second film came out a couple weeks ago. It was about a young Greek woman who eventually goes to Europe and has to deal with a lot of men and prove herself, even though she grew up among a lot of women, and finally found her inner strength to fight these fights. That woman's name, of course, somebody recognized it, was Patty Jenkins. The film was called Wonder Woman. I would like to say that I know her and that she would make my films, but she isn't returning my phone calls. I am worried about a restraining order, so I'm not going to call her. No, but again, Wonder Woman and Patty Jenkins, there was, I posted in the AFI Facebook group where I showed her directing Gal Gadot. And I actually put, and everyone loved this comment, I said, Patty, and Gal Gadot is in the Wonder Woman outfit, and I actually put in, Patty Jenkins is the woman on the left. And they love that, and again, if you can find yourself in a character, even if the character is different from you, you've already taken the first step to creating a memorable character. Which brings us to beware the Ides of March. Beware creating predictable characters that are literally doing something over the course of the day that is expected, boring, and just something that you really don't care about. Tony Hillerman, who again is another Shakespeare of New Mexico, he said, cut the parts out that the readers skip, which I thought was a brilliant statement. Cut the parts out that the readers skip. Get to the point, but have your characters be interesting. Have your characters have a life of their own. In terms of inspiration, there's inspiration everywhere. You know this. For example, speaking of Bank of America, I used to go to the branch downtown, and there was the good teller and the bad teller. Anyone ever go to a bank and there's a good teller and a bad teller? And I actually had it down for my own reactions where the good teller, if I was depositing like a $10,000 check, which has happened, I would go to the good teller and say, hi, I'm depositing a check. If I was overdrawn, which happened a lot more, I would say, oh, hi, I'm going to have the money tomorrow and I'll be depositing it and this and that. I would go to the bad teller. And I took that dynamic and I put that in one of my latest books, where there is the good teller, where literally the character will go over and always deal with the good teller as opposed to the bad teller. Every single one of you probably goes to a supermarket. There's the good cashier and the bad cashier. There's the slow person, the fast person. There are cousins you like and cousins you don't like. Use them in your writing. Use them when you are creating your characters. And think about how they affect the people around them. So again, it's not just... I met another teller who was hearing impaired, and so I put her actually in the new book, and I combined the good teller and the hearing impaired teller. They were two different people. But I noticed that my reaction to both of them was exactly the same. So focus when you are writing on your characters not on who they are, but how they affect the people around you. And that is how you make characters come alive. And the other thing you have to do is, just because it really happened, if you're writing fiction, don't worry about it. Well, because again, there was the pretty good teller who was at the Bank of America downtown, and the hearing impaired teller who was the teller at the Carlisle branch. I combined the two of them into one character. Is that a sin? Yeah. It's not, because I'm not writing for me, I'm writing for you, writing for the audience. So when creating these characters, think about who they are and combine them, and don't confine yourself to the real world. There's another great quote by Dennis Hopper, who I don't think has ever done Shakespeare, and I've quoted this a lot. It's, just because it happened to you doesn't mean it's interesting. And again, the good teller and the bad teller story, I think it's pretty interesting. That's literally worth about 3 paragraphs. It's not worth a whole book. I did have, your character should stand alone and should have character arcs. And an example that I had in my latest book, I had a neighbor who was 25 years old, handsome young guy who graduated from Caltech, and he was interviewing everywhere. He was working at the labs, he was interviewing at Google, then he had an interview at Apple, then he had an interview at Facebook. And he literally said he was interviewing at NASA down at the spaceport, and he had a badge. He showed me the badge which had Mars on it. And I don't know whether he actually interviewed on Mars or he was interviewing with a company doing a Mars launcher. But again, I met this guy. If you took all of our interactions over the course of living next to each other for a year, probably talked to him 5 minutes a day, once a week. Literally, you can say maybe I spent less than 3 hours with him altogether. But he became a character in my new book, and my new book is a corporate thriller, so in the end, the character is wearing the badge of the evil corporation. It starts out wearing Facebook, Google, Apple, and then wears the evil corporation, where the character realizes, oh my God, they're all out to get me. Do things like that. Take something from life, but expand it and take it to the next level, and give this character, who literally had minimal impact on my life, and I'm sure he doesn't even remember me. Oh wait, yeah, you're the guy who wrote No, you didn't write a book. No, I can't. He doesn't remember me. Patty Jenkins probably doesn't remember me either. But again, these people have touched my life, and there are people who have touched your life. And do not be afraid to write about them, but do not be afraid to change it around a bit. And again, the other thing, anyone watch Better Call Saul last night? Did you like it? Better Call Saul, as you know, is based on Breaking Bad. And again, what Vince Gilligan did is he took characters in one show and then made them in another show. And for the most part, these characters were consistent with Breaking Bad. You know that certain people are going to die. You also know that certain people aren't going to be around for the next show. However, he managed to create stories for them and create life for them. I had no idea who Chuck was. Chuck is the brother played by Michael McKean. And out of just thin cloth, I don't know who it was based on, he created this character. And this character has life, this character has hopes and dreams. And that character is a breathing character, and again, as I said before, the character of Chuck interacts with the character of Jimmy. By the way, my wife said, "You're just like slipping Jimmy" once. And that to me was the ultimate insult that she could give me. And again, when you're writing, think about who these characters are. There's a great statement that characters should talk to you. In my latest book, the character who should be, in the last book was 10, is suddenly 17. She literally said, "I want to be a rebellious, moody teenager." And I was like, "No, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work." And then literally this character kept saying, "I am a rebellious teenager." So I made her 17 in this book. Again, for anyone here written more than one book or attempting to write more than one book with the same characters? Anyone writing a series? You are not going to have perfect consistency. Even George Martin, he has somebody to tell him how to keep track of all the books, and he's failed sometimes, but he does his best. Also, J.K. Rowling has somebody literally to tell them, well, you put this character as 15 here, is now 17, and something like that. Do not go to be limited by the truth. Again, I've quoted this before. Tony Montana, "I always tell the truth, even when I lie." When writing characters, always tell the truth, even when you lie. Characters can age, characters can change, as long as they are true to their internal selves. Which brings us to a quote from Henry VI that I'm sure all of you know. First thing we do is we kill all the lawyers. All right, so let's just say you guys have written that great story, and you've created all these characters. Can you be sued? I want to start with a nonfiction anecdote, which is true. It happened within the last few months. Somebody wrote a couple of paragraphs and said this person is an escort, was going around sleeping with other people for money in New York City in the early 90s. That person, that newspaper, I think it was the Daily Mail, was originally sued for like $300 million. They settled for $750,000. I believe the story was 3 paragraphs long. This story was essentially $250,000 a paragraph. Again, as I've said, your words matter. Anyone know who the person was who successfully sued? Yep.
Melania Trump.
Correct. Melania Trump sued for $750,000 and they settled. I think she sued for hundreds of millions and settled. Question that everyone has, and if you want to hear more of the legal aspects of this, come to my talk at the State Bar, is can I be sued? And again, as Larry said, I travel all around the state. I've been in every judicial district. I've waited in the lobby of every courtroom, and I have never seen a libel or defamation lawsuit, not one. Have I heard of cease and desist letters? Yes. There is a chance that you can have a cease and desist letter. And again, you're saying memoirs. I think I gave an example in my last talk of how you can get in trouble if you write a memoir. And the example that I gave, and I don't want to repeat myself, but I'll do it briefly, is let's just say you're writing about the high school and you say, old Mr. Jones stole stuff from the bake sale and he took Mrs. Smith, who's not his wife, to Vegas. You are actually speaking at the high school, you've written this in your book, and you say, you guys remember my book? I see Mr. Smith there, remember when he took Mrs. Jones with the stolen money? And let's just say Mr. Smith gets fired from his job and loses his $100,000 a year pension. You can get sued. That's what it would take. There has to be a damage to someone else. It has to be proven. And again, I have not seen that, but there's always the chance. So be careful. Change names. Change some details about people in your real stories. It is very unlikely that you will be sued. However, if you go around making speeches, you can get in trouble. A story that I've said before, and I do want to say again, because arguably the most stressful weekend of my whole life is I was writing Rattlesnake Lawyer. I was a public defender in Roswell. They found out that I was writing the book. I was told by my superior, if you write about anyone in this office, you will be fired. If you violate one single client confidence, you will be disbarred. And I was 26 years old. Basically, if you are disbarred, the guy was saying, you will never work as a lawyer anywhere in the United States again. And there was a moment where I remembered vaguely that this woman shouted, I killed my mama because she's a witch. And I was pretty sure that that statement would not be privileged because she shouted it in a courtroom and it was on TV. So I was like, but then I thought, oh my God, did it make the paper? And I literally called the news station and said, do you have a copy of Mrs. Whatever saying, my mama's a witch, that's why I killed her? My mama's a witch. And they're saying, no, we don't store that. Maybe you try Albuquerque. I called Albuquerque. Do you have a copy of that tape? No, we only keep tapes for 90 days. And you're saying that happened back 2-3 months ago? We no longer have that tape. I'm like, all right, can I check the newspapers? Is that in the papers? My mom is a witch, and again, this was before websites. I couldn't look that up. I was terrified that I was going to be fired because I had violated, if I couldn't prove that that was privileged, I would be disbarred because I was revealing a secret. If this was, the reason I killed my mom is because she's a witch. Okay, and that would be enough to get me disbarred. Turns out it did make the paper, it did make the news. My superiors, when they saw it, it's like, oh, don't worry about it. I was just fired. Again, the reason I was fired is I wrote about somebody in my office. And I saw that person at a bar convention just about 2 weeks ago. And we joked about it. He was actually thinking of suing me. And I stole a few of his jokes. And I actually told his jokes and I made them laugh. And again, if somebody talks to you and you use their stories and it causes them damage or loss in the community, they can write a cease and desist letter. Will it cause a lawsuit unless they have damage? Probably not. Do not worry so much. Folks always ask me that, and again, I can assure you, chances are nothing is going to happen. However, do not insult certain people or certain groups because bad things can happen in very limited circumstances. In terms of people you do not sue or do not say bad things about, McDonald's, Disney, Elvis, Donald Trump. You can get away with a lot of stuff. I did read a book by somebody where he blamed Hillary Clinton for being a murderer or something like that. And he actually made a lot of money from his book, and I think his book was actually optioned. But again, for the most part, you're not really going to be in trouble unless you're stupid about it. And stress, I think I've also talked about, Oprah said, "I'm never eating beef again." And she was sued and she won. However, my publisher, actually, my first publisher was a lawyer, and there was something about Food Lion where they were accused of putting pink slime instead of beef. And that actually caused damage. That was more of the news context. But if you say something that hurts somebody's livelihood, if you were to say, I go to, I'm trying to think of a local restaurant, the Quarters, and their ribs are made out of pink slime, and this is in my book, and you do a reading, and again, I think it takes a little bit more than just writing. If you were to go around everywhere saying the Quarters puts pink slime in their burgers and in their steak, you could get sued, but it would take them suffering real damage. There's now been something about reviews. Anyone here ever get a bad review on Amazon like me? Anyone here ever write a bad review on Amazon? Read it. Hopefully it wasn't about me. But again, there's now, that's an area of law that's sort of beyond the scope, but it is there. People are getting into litigation over reviews because reviews can be brutal. I mean, my wife and I went to a place up in Boulder, I won't say the name just in case, where we stayed at a hotel where our room wasn't ready because people were living in our room and the manager didn't know about it. So we knocked on the door, it's like, "This is our room," and they were living there. And we put that in our review. And the manager actually was very angry about that, but instead of suing us, he had 5 other people. I think he had the people who were squatting in the room write a review saying it was a good review. So again, those are areas that literally everything you write has consequences. Is it worth $400,000 or $500,000? No. $700,000? No. But again, you're not going to be able to stay for free at the Twin Lakes Inn in Boulder, Colorado. I don't care. Oh, I guess we're being paid, but so again, it's a very fine hotel. We were just there on a bad night. Oh God, no! It was just like I could tell stories. I will never stay at that hotel in Boulder, Colorado. So again, right with the yes question.
There's a precedent this week where this young girl told her boyfriend to kill himself, and she was, of course, she was guilty.
Yeah.
If you were writing a novel and your words were so persuasive that it caused people to harm themselves.
Ozzy Osbourne, it happened. Ozzy Osbourne wrote a song called, I believe, "The Suicide Solution." Even though, and here's where it gets weird. I don't think I've ever heard the song before, but Ozzy said something like, "Don't try. Suicide. Don't try. Suicide. It's not really good." So if you were to hear that, it would be suicide, good. And somebody committed suicide. Ozzy Osbourne was sued because it was clear that people were influenced by the song, even though it was not Ozzy's intent. And that's when I believe it settled out of court. So again, that is another area of the law, specifically with the internet. Yeah, Zach?
Specifically coming back to reviews, is there a statute of limitations that falls under, or that covers that for a specific period of time, like a year or ends?
Well, no, if you were, are you saying if you were to write Julius Caesar's a crappy play, don't ever watch the Shakespeare, do it again, that would be far beyond the statute of limitations. But if you were to say, and especially if you were to say something that you knew to be true, I'm trying to think like, if you were to say something like George R. R. Martin? If you were to say in a review, I know he is stealing from other writers, and I know he's probably, the reason he likes sex so much is because he's a pervert, and you were to put that in a review, again, I doubt that you could be sued for that. However, he could certainly write you a cease and desist letter. If that's posted on Amazon, you could have that, he can ask Amazon to take that review off. And they can do that. I've had, in my 15 years of writing, I had one review taken off just because somebody lied about me. It takes a lot, but I mean, that is something that you can do. Supposedly you'd have to, it could be about when you find out about it, and again, it would be have to be something that causes you damage. If they were to say Zach stole, especially plagiarism. Plagiarism is serious stuff. Zach stole, what is your most famous book? Transient. Zach stole Transient from somebody on a street corner. And they wrote the book and Zach just put his name to it. That is something you could sue for. Especially if, because I understand you've got some amazing deals coming forward. If you're all set to go, and it's like, hi, we've got this, and I remember your direct quote, it's not going to suck. And I want to see your film now. And again, right as the film's about to be, they're about to go into production, the producer says, wow, I heard that some transient on the street said that you stole the idea. We're just going to give him $10,000 or $100,000. You could sue if you could prove that that is what happened. So yeah, there is this, I believe it's 2 years, they're different, but it's 2 years from the injury that people can get around that. All right, I might as well go to questions, yeah.